We're trying to reform the way the web is funded, which consists of people, users of browsers, advertisers, and publishers. We're trying to put them together in a clean system that's based on consent and privacy by design. This is kind of the opposite of Google and Facebook.
Apple and Google have not allowed us to participate in their app stores, and they have a duopoly. There is no free market when it comes to mobile app hardware, mobile app distribution. Apple and Google are 98% of the market share. So that is not a free market when they can not only decide who wins and loses, but also who can play the game. It's really disgusting, and we need to keep building.
The advertisers fund an awful lot of the system. It's estimated $100 billion US this calendar year in the United States. Because we see so much money going to advertising so that people have free content, we cannot count on advertising. So we'd like to reform it, tame it, put it into a user private setting where you're not tracked. And because the user pays attention to the ads as well as the content, we think the user should be rewarded in the revenue flow.
As long as I can process payments without permission and without being censored, then Bitcoin is going to be our choice.
We can get users by appealing to their basic need for better speed, better battery utilization, safety, privacy, control. And if we get enough users, we can bring publishers and advertisers who are always game for a new audience, especially a unique audience that blocks ads. But how do we connect the payments that we've blocked by blocking ads and tracking? The obvious way to do it is with a cryptocurrency or token. We tried it with Bitcoin, but that required our users to buy the Bitcoin. We thought, wouldn't it be better to give people a token from the beginning, gratis? So we created the basic attention token.
Bitcoin offers censorship-resistant payment processing that is proven. The only thing that I'm interested in is processing payments without permission, censorship-resistant payment processing, true decentralization. Part of my mission is I want to educate every new user that comes in the door. I want to educate them and say, well, you just joined the free speech social network. Now learn about free speech money.
Gab replacing BAT with Bitcoin after forking Brave. Gab, the censorship-resistant alternative to Twitter, has forked the Brave browser, rebranding it as Dissenter. Down the road we will re-add Bitcoin integration, which Brave had originally, but removed, via the Lightning Network. We already have a partner in place for this, they say. The browser has not yet launched as far as we can see, but they show a demo of it, with the browser not really that much different from any other browser. Except in two ways. It removes all ads, and unlike Brave, it doesn't add its own ads. Gab said. Gab.com Dissenter.com tweeted, many ways to make money outside of advertising. Don't be fooled. Do you have a Netflix subscription? Spotify? Apple Music? What would you pay to support? No ads, privacy, free speech, not making money for Silicon Valley/big media, and quoted Ethan Martin tweeting, how are you going to make money and scale the projects you're involved in? It's easy to criticize Brave, but the advertising ecosystem isn't going to go away, it's going to get bigger over time. BTW, I'm a supporter of Gab and the browser project. Someone will make money, however, and perhaps the idea here is for the browser to offer paywall-like option where individuals can pay for an article or for a subscription with Bitcoin. Presumably Andrew Torba, Gab's founder, would keep a bit from such payments, but the problem with the paywall system isn't the method of payment. It's the fact that there are just so many paywalls that pretty much makes it impossible to subscribe to all the papers unless you are rich. The solution for movies was Netflix, one subscription and effectively all the entertainment you want. When it comes to newspapers, such solution would have considerable implications for free speech. Netflix has immense power over movie creators. For someone to have such power over what paper is written and funded would be a significant step backwards, and it would amount to licensed media, an abhorrent thought. If Netflix, however, is the browser, that's a bit different. Here presumably there would be some sort of automatic system, some sort of Bitcoin wallet, publishers who presumably can choose what subscription they want to offer, and then individuals would just be able to click without requiring a sign-up. Obviously Google, Apple and perhaps Facebook are probably watching. To compete with Gab would be as easy as Chrome adding a Bitcoin or ETH wallet, then instead of publishers going to some customization menu that presumably relies on Torba following their instructions, you would have decentralized integration by just copy-pasting some code if publishers want to. Because while the rhetoric from Torba is fine and nice, we all know how do no evil can wane with time. Giving control of publishing to Torba or Brendan Ike can be a very dangerous step down the line. Instead, where the media is concerned, there has to be decentralized implementation or choice, there has to be no central party that decides, and there has to be no requirement of permission by anyone. All three have to be at a technical level, not of a just trust us manner, as although plenty can be said about some media, we shouldn't forget journalists are assassinated far too often for the fine work some of them do to maintain and perhaps expand our liberties. Brave Browser arguably doesn't do much to empower quality journalism. They merely replace Google Ads and centralize it in the BAT team with far too much trust us in its current design, as it effectively doesn't use the blockchain at all and thus has pretty much no transparency. Dissenter might be interesting in the paywall aspect, presuming they only facilitate the ability to make the paywall process as convenient as possible, rather than in any way being able to decide who can have such paywall or that all should have it, etc. However, one benefit of ads from a free speech perspective is that anyone can initially support itself or can fall back on ads if there's an industry recession. In its absence, they might not be able to get to the point where they can justify putting up a paywall. Meaning Dissenter 2 falls quite short of empowering creators, because while users might not like ads and might not like to pay, the alternative in their absence is billionaire-controlled propaganda media. Any solution has to square both the interest of users and the interest of publishers, because the freedom of expression is not just words on an old document. What is interesting, however, is that innovation is once more appearing in this space, which went stagnant after Google's domination. The competition between Brave and Dissenter 2, as well as presumably others, might also lead to a better holistic solution. Such solution likely has to mix different monetization methods to strike a delicate balance between keeping information free and keeping information funded. Because we shouldn't lose sight of the many who can't pay for whatever reason. Tomorrow's Einstein might, after all, be a smart but poor lad or lass in Africa or Calcutta. Copyrights trustnodes.com. Will all Futility tokens be forked? BAT, MKR, DGD, Arden and countless of other tokens claim to have utility, but some are now saying they're Futility tokens. Take BAT, which has been forked. The token pretty much plays no role in Brave Browser. It is not necessarily used by advertisers, as they can pay in fiat, although back-end conversion to BAT is promised, but no one can verify such back-end conversion. Almost nothing happens on-chain for Brave and little seems to be automated. The current design instead seems to be a very centralized setup with a for-profit company managing the advertising of the internet. BAT here is very much an afterthought, with its role more social. It can create a community around it. It provided the initial funding for the development of Brave ads, and has some sort of a rewarding aspect. That rewarding aspect can of course be an ETH. BAT runs on top of Ethereum, so any blockchain capacity concerns would apply to both. That rewarding aspect can also be in Bitcoin, or USDT, or even plain fiat, because the blockchain part here almost has nothing to do with the system. Forking off MKR might be a bit more difficult, but as they continue racking up fees to now 16.5% because they are currently effectively a monopoly, the incentives to fork are increasing. Devs are perhaps waiting for multi-collateral DAI and the launch of the savings rate, so then they can fork a pretty much finished product, but does MKR play a role that makes it unforkable? The token was also mainly to develop the funding of the product, with social aspects like a community, and here the stated function is to act as effectively the banker of last resort if the peg goes south. Such extreme situation, however, would effectively have this as a failed project. Nor is it clear that involving MKR in this situation would be any better than letting the peg go off and then hopefully recover. Plus, there are far more efficient ways of creating a central bank of sorts. You just take some of the fees and put them in this backup fund. In the process, so creating a truly decentralized stablecoin, unlike current DAI, which is controlled by a handful of people that act a bit like the fiat Fed. DAI itself is an example of an actual utility token. DAI is the product. It's not for decoration and it's not justified by arguments that can also apply if X token is replaced with ETH. There are many other tokens that are effectively products. US stocks is one other example. DGD, however, is just decoration. Arguably OMG2 and many other tokens that are basically a stock. Capital formation, shared ownership, dividends, are all good things, but Apple doesn't put its stock in the middle of the iOS operating system like Arden arguably does. Plus the lack of equity ownership in tokens can potentially create perverse incentives where VCs get actual equity ownership in the dev company behind the token and then direct the project towards monopolization tendencies. They do it to benefit the token's price, you can say, so it's all fine, but ETH does kind of compete with such tokens, so forking them and replacing them with ETH would arguably benefit ETH's price. There are some tokens you can't quite fork, like PNB, but most current tokens can be replaced with ETH and perhaps will be replaced with ETH. Like Augur. Now this is a more complicated case because rep can split if there is a dispute as to what is truth. During such dispute you stake rep, which just as easily can probably be ETH too, but eventually this creates two different universes, rep A and rep B. However, one universe takes all the ETH that has been bet, while the other universe has no ETH. So arguably you can remove the token completely. There is no point going further through the list because arguably you can remove any token and replace it with ETH unless the token itself is the whole point. The benefit of doing so would be ETH's increase in utility, but the token does play an important role in incentivizing the creation of such utility to begin with. Without MKR, there might have been no DAI and a project that keeps improving. Without rep, there might have been no Augur. If a dev team replaces them both with ETH, then it isn't clear what the incentive is for them to continue developing the project. Arguably it isn't clear what MKR's or rep's incentive is either, presuming the team already made a lot of money. Since there is no actual ownership by token holders who can fire lead devs, replace personnel, exercise fiduciary rights in court and so on, it isn't clear where accountability, responsibility, and drive is meant to come from. In the current design there is usually an executive team or a managerial class that doesn't quite have to answer to anyone. The idea of course was to use smart contracts to release funds only if targets are met and so on, but one DAO bug was enough to transform that into just handing over millions with the team then free to do whatever it wishes. So really the only accountability method is forking, and any project that doesn't have much use for the token or uses it inappropriately might find itself in the same position as a paid product competing with a free version. There can of course still be such competition, but there would have to be some very good reason for individuals to use the fee-charging version when there are far cheaper or even free alternatives that perhaps do the very same thing. Editorial copyrights trustnodes.com